Welcome back to Mind the Experience, and today we're stepping back from the pixels and the prototypes to focus on really the most important instrument any creative would need in their process, and that is how to be a leader. Now, I am truly honored to be joined by Madeline McQueen, and she's an executive coach and basically a rocket ship within her own industry. She's dedicated her career to helping leaders unlock their full potential. And she's been published on Forbes and so much more as we're going to learn today. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited. So, Madeline, thank you so much for being here.
Desi, thank you so much for having me. It's my absolute privilege to be here with you. So thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me as well. Now, Madeline, I really wanted to start with you and how you've become the powerhouse of an executive coach that you are today. It's been a marvel just to watch you continue to soar within your industry. And you've been coaching for over 20 years as well. So can you share with our audience just a little bit about that journey and how that has resulted in forming, within the forming of your company ultimately, which is Magnificently You?
Yeah, it has been a long journey. So I suppose 21 years ago, a little bit longer than that, I left my corporate sales career selling IT. And because, I had a miscarriage, I got pregnant straight away, and I was like, I'm not going to have a problem with another baby. And I had a little one that was already in school. And so I wanted to branch out on my own so I could be available. And I started, actually, I had a client that was called Schlumberger. They're massive in gas and oil. And some of them, I closed this massive deal with them at 2 million a year. And this is back in 2000, 1999 kind of times. And when I left, a couple of them came to me and said, look, we want to branch out and do something different, and we'd really like you to support us. And that's where kind of sales consulting, sales coaching kind of started, which kind of morphed into business development, business coaching. I did a course back in 2004 with the Coaching Academy when coaching just came out. And I did a life coaching course, and I was like, oh, I really wish I'd done the business coaching course. And then I started doing more consulting, more business coaching. And in fact, you and I met when I was doing business consulting for my family club back kind of 2012 time. And obviously I'd been kind of doing this on and off because of my children and being around for them. My husband had a business, so I was supporting him in his business. I was holding the household together. And the more I was doing with businesses, the more I was working with a business owner. And the more I was recognizing that the confidence of that business owner had a massive impact on the organization. What they believed was possible, how they processed, how they operated in fear or in possibility really made a difference to their decision making. And I always kept saying, I don't even know what I do. I can do a lot of things. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But most probably around 2015, around that time, I kind of said, okay, stake in the ground. I'm going to focus on working with leaders. And then that kind of morphed. And what happened is the more leaders I worked with, and I had a particular leader who was just recommending me to people all the time. And that's how my business really grew. And then I also worked with, and I think this is really good for businesses to know, or business owners to know, especially if you're in the consulting, coaching, even as a designer, right, or in the creative industry, is to maybe work with another organization in industry as an associate, which I did. I did associate work. That helped me build out my own methodology, my own confidence in what I did. And it gave me good clients to have worked with. So I kind of used that to then really build my practice and work with leaders, and my name just kept getting passed on and passed on. I was speaking, I was delivering workshops. I've worked with companies like Soprasteria, Sainsbury's, Google. I've done like several cohorts in Google. I recently did something for 100 leaders at Levi Strauss, Cosmocon. So you might know of Cosmo Consult. They're big in Microsoft consulting. I've worked with people in Meta. I've worked with leaders, leader at Nike, Saatchi and Saatchi, M&C Saatchi. So I've done a lot of work in Admar Comms. I've done a lot of work in finance, Natixis, Investec, Jupiter Asset Management. So a lot of my work is definitely around Admar Comms, finance, retail even. But they're kind of my main, and tech. I love working with tech companies. I've hosted the largest developer conference in Europe for 2 years running. Would have done 3, but we hit COVID. So that is We Are Developers. So if you are a developer, that's a great conference to go to. I mean, when I was hosting, it was like 8,000 people. I know that's mostly around 14,000 now. So you're going to really kind of meet great people. So I've introduced Gary... oh gosh, who's the chess guy? Gary, I can't remember his name. Him onto stage. I've introduced Steve Wozniak onto stage. John Romero. You might know him from all of the games. So I've done some really interesting things. I don't think I always talk about the kind of different things that I've done or the kind of organizations that I've worked with. But yeah, I literally have had all of these, and that's been a really great experience for me. My work is around clarity, it's around confidence, it's around empowerment, it's around strategic thinking and planning, about stepping into your power, into your permission. Because I think what a lot of people think is leadership is all about leadership frameworks. So what's your leadership style? What's your frameworks? But what we've missed is the personal development side of leadership. And if you're not working on yourself, how are you supposed to help other people? And we've all experienced leaders that weren't doing the work. And then, the experience of working with them is very toxic. And so how do we avoid that is by actually doing the work. So that's what I do. That's how I got here. There's so much more. I've had a community exclusively for Black and Black mixed heritage women in leadership. I run once a year, I do a luncheon that's all about kind of taking your time. I call it Me for Me, time as leaders for women in leadership. I have a group coaching program. I do one-to-one coaching. I speak, and then I facilitate as well. So, I've also worked with organizations and working with the leadership team based on the Patrick Lencioni work of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, because people aren't having honest conversations.
Yeah, wow. And that is so necessary as well. And just to hear your journey, just to hear how you've transitioned from sales into this particular area of consulting and coaching, that is absolutely inspiring.
Thank you.
That kind of like takes me onto a nice segue of moving into really just the impact of your work, Madeline, and your clients, as we've researched, have consistently said that you help them to open up new paths and recognize their full potential, recognize their full strength. So it's not just about hitting KPIs, it's about transformation, and that's what they say you've really done for them. And so when you hear that kind of feedback, what does it tell you about the state of leadership today and the need for what you do?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I've always been kind of a little kind of reserved to use that word transformation, because when you're dealing with people, they're very complex. And transformation looks different to different people. And sometimes when you work with somebody, they will transform. But because that's now their norm, they don't recognize they've been through transformation, or they forget they've been through transformation. I think what it really says is we are not encouraged in our life journey, like whether it's from school all the way through, to work on ourselves. So much of our work is outward focused, or our value is based on what we do, rather than the content of our character and our self-knowing, our self-belief, our self-confidence. And that makes a really big difference to how you operate and show up in the world. When you're not sure about who you are, sometimes what happens is, especially if you buck up against somebody who is sure about who they are, they become a problem for you. And you treat with them as such. Now, they're not the problem. You are. And I think a lot of leaders, not all, but a lot of leaders who are not doing the personal development work become toxic in the workplace. A lot of that is because they don't, it's that thing, know thyself. And they don't know themselves. A lot of people have found themselves in positions that they've fallen into. That it's not by design, it's by default. And so I have a lot of, especially women come to me who are maybe in their 40s, early 50s, who've recognized, I've done that, I've got all this tenure, I've built this career, but I didn't really build it. It happened to me, and I don't really know who I am. I don't even know what I really want to do. And some of that work is definitely about helping them to get to know themselves, or to have a different lens on who they are. I also talk about a lot with my clients around their own greatness. So I have an acronym for GREAT, which is what's your, what's good, what's your attributes, your skills as such. And then the R is what are your results, whether that's your certificates or things that you've done. The second, then we get to, not second, but the third letter, E, is your experience, the things that the kudos you've gained from doing. Then we've got your achievements, and I try not to minimize achievements into what you've just done in this organization or what you did in the last year, because many of us have got decades of achievements that we've completely ignored. And then what are your talents? They're like the natural things that come to you. Most people haven't spent the time to understand that about themselves. And we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. And a lot of that, well, there's two sides to it. One is that we do things and we move straight on. So we haven't quantified what we've achieved and how we can use that in the next thing. And the second thing is that sometimes we are made to feel like an imposter in an organization, especially if you're looking at any kind of diversity, ethnicity, disability, gender, LGBTQ plus. And so sometimes we're internalizing something that is actually an external issue. Helping people to understand the difference between the two can really make a difference or transformation to how they operate in the world.
Wow. And, just hearing that as well helps us to understand, or especially myself, that what you do and your mission extends way beyond just helping somebody, get a promotion or to be a better self in just one specific aspect. It's way more than that. There are dimensions to this. Thank you so much for that. So it seems to be more about, we want to try and, or you want to try and really just foster more so about helping somebody to be more conscious in an authentic way of leading, especially in the world today. And that's a massive takeaway for me. So how far does that mission extend for you when it comes to helping somebody to be more conscious about how they can authentically lead?
Honest, for me, and I was asked this question in the last week by a copywriter, and it's like, what's your why? I am stunned by the injustice in this world when it comes to gender equity. Considering that women are 51% of the world's population, and some of the same things are happening, and actually we're having an experience where we're going backwards. And so one of my big things is about having more women in leadership and having their impact. There's so much research about how women in leadership change the culture in an organization, especially if they're not choosing an alpha male way of leading. And so for me, the mission is far wider. It's not just about, you know, one leader here. It's about how we change the way our world operates in a positive way for all of us. I want us to be recognized. I'd love it that in schools we were doing more work around gender equity. We were doing more work around self development and personal development and self leadership. You know, it's great to learn the subjects, but the one thing that makes the biggest difference to us on this planet is our relationship with ourselves. So for me, the more we can kind of embed that in our way of being, our way of living, our way of operating in the world, and then that's seeping into leadership in organizations, leadership in families, leadership in every aspect of our lives, or friendship groups, the better our world becomes.
Wow, I love that. And I love the way in which you've just expanded on what that broader vision for leadership really means as well. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Most of us are leaders and not recognizing that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that includes many within our audience as well, the ones who are watching, because in our audience, we have ones who are designers and creative professionals. And I see a huge parallel, especially when I think about my design career as well, between a designer's journey, moving from a hands-on craftsperson to someone who's an architect of thought, and then someone who becomes a strategic influencer. And then they become that person who is in that leadership position. And they end up having the challenges that you address as well. I mean,
Yeah.
do you see that connection? I know you mentioned it when it comes to designers being in that area of leadership and having to figure that out.
Absolutely. I mean, look, if we're talking about designers and we're looking at the work that they do, regardless of what the specialism is, like for me as a business owner, when I go to a designer, I'm looking for them. Yes, I want to, this is what I've got in my head, but I'm looking for them, their expertise to lead me as to what's possible, as to my blind spots, my own creative blind spots, because I'm not a creator, I'm not a designer. Whether that is a designer of infrastructures or whether that's a designer of brands and that kind of thing. And so it's important to recognize that you sit in a leadership position as a creator because people are coming to you for your specialism. Secondly, it's about you leading us down the path of what you do and how you do it and how that positively impacts. And if you're a designer who maybe works with other designers, or you're a lead and you've got people behind you, you are leading those people on projects. You're leading those people on concepts. And so the sooner you recognize that leadership isn't just about a title, it's so much more than that. And leadership doesn't also have to be just about leading people. You can be leading ideas as well. And I think that's really important to understand. So before you are at the top with a team overseeing, you know, this massive team of designers and creatives, before you get there, learn to lead where you are. Learn to extol leadership skills, leadership attributes where you are. And I always say as well, if you want to be a leader, start acting like a leader before you get into leadership.
That is brilliant, because it's impossible for someone to just turn it on like a switch, isn't it?
You can't.
No, exactly. We're human, and that's one of the biggest challenges of us as human beings, being able to transform. We need to be able to basically learn by repetition. So absolutely, I love that, the way in which you've connected coaching principles to the specific struggles of creative professionals. That's fantastic. And that's a common hurdle as well that designers have, as you rightly said as well, Madeline, because transitioning from that doer to delegator to strategist to leader, and it's not just common to designers. This is common to anyone in any industry, which makes basically our conversation relevant for every business professional, every person who wants to be a leader. You can get promoted and, you know, for your craft, but then you have to learn a whole new skill set.
Yeah.
And then they feel stuck in the weeds. So what's the first thing you tend to work with when you come across clients who have approached you and they're in positions like that? What kind of things do you kind of like generally help them to realize first of all?
Yeah. Um, one of the questions I love to ask, it's one of my first questions, not always, but it also depends on what they're presenting, is what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? And that makes people stop, because sometimes we think everything is a challenge and everything isn't. But also sometimes the biggest challenges we're facing may not actually be a leadership issue, a general leadership issue. It actually might be a self issue. It might actually be an issue where I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. Or I know I can lead, but I'm not sure if I know how to, very much what you said, move from being an individual contributor to being in a position of leadership, and moving from feeling that I have to do everything or it has to be done my way. Delegation, I think it's one of the biggest leadership challenges that there are. And what I mean by that is, very often when we've been in an exceptional individual contributor, letting go of the mantle is really difficult, because we want everybody to do it our way. We think nobody can do it, and this is why the kind of the perfectionism comes in. We don't want to let it go, but what we do then is we micromanage, and nobody likes to be micromanaged. Fair enough for micromanagement when somebody's just started, because you definitely need to hold their hand and lead the way. But when you've got experienced people, what they want you to do is to trust their creativity, trust their ability to ideate, trust their skill set to get the job done. And I think when we get there, that's when we've got to move to a more coaching way of leading, as opposed to a kind of an X way of leading, which is, do this is how you do it. But one of those things is also about getting clear on what your role is now. And your role now isn't being in the weeds. Your role now is about being more strategic. So one of the things I like to do with clients, especially when they have this particular problem, whether if I'm in person, great. If I'm not in person, then I get them to visualize it, which is, you're standing on, say, so if we're talking about London, do you know where the Doer Brasserie is? I can't remember what the building is. It's the big triangle.
Yeah, is that the Shard?
It could, okay, let's use
or is it Tower 42?
No, it's not Tower 40. Okay, let's use the Shard as an example. You're at the top of the Shard and you've got 360 view of London, right? And you're the leader. Your team is out in London doing the work. Take this for any city. So wherever you're listening from, think about a city that's got a really tall building that's got a 360 view of a city. Okay, you see that one building over there is on fire, and you are responsible for outing fires. What do you do? Do you leave the building that you're in, leave the Shard, go to that building, help put out the fire? Now, if you do that, do you still have a 360 view of the city? The answer is no, you don't. Your job wasn't to go because you already had somebody in the building, or maybe you had somebody nearby. Your job was to send somebody to deal with that, to continue your communication with them, to find out what was going on, maybe even instruct them whilst you continue your 360 view, so you can ensure that everything else is going well. That is the difference between being an individual contributor and stepping into leadership or management, maybe management first and then leadership. But even in leadership, you have to have a far more strategic view than you do an individual contributor. Now, don't get me wrong, there may be times where you may need to step in, but that's not your first port of call. And that's maybe something we might work on, because that's a mindset shift.
Yeah. Wow. That is so powerful. That word picture as well. And that, I mean, it certainly drives it home for me, and it helps me to almost just reflect upon my own journey of how I've been able to transfer my own skill sets from one to another, from strategic to leadership and so on. It's such a powerful thing for us to keep in mind, all of us as professionals. But, you know, Madeline, that clearly tells me that you're passionate not just about how you coach and who you coach, but about scaling your impact as well. Which brings me on to your new platform, myplace, and also your organization as well, which I'm so excited for you to tell us a bit more about. It sounds definitely more like just a Q&A session as well. And it's something that I know for yourself expanded into a community. But the question really that I have is, what was the inspiration behind creating this space for conscious leaders?
So I actually originally had a club called the Compass Club, because one of the things I wanted to do was help, specifically women in leadership, really find their North Star, their direction, but also give them the skill sets around their clarity, around their confidence and their empowerment so they could do more. So let me quickly explain. There is an equation. The equation for me is, when you get really clear about what you want, why you want it, how you want it, how you want to operate, and lots of people are not clear, but they're still trying to show up in the world, then it's easy. So clarity plus confidence. So it's easy then to build evidence-based confidence. And I say that's why the great acronym is there, right? So it's evidence-based. It's no use me trying to tell you you'll be confident. That means nothing. What is the evidence that says I have confidence and I know how to use my confidence and I know how to recognize the skill sets and the abilities and the experience, the talents, the achievements, the skills and attributes that I can use as my bedrock for anything else that I do. So clarity plus confidence. I know the mathematicians are going to tell me, Madeline, it's rubbish, and I'm going to tell you I don't really care. But this is what happens at 56. Over empowerment. Because when you feel clear and you feel confident, you can feel empowered to do just about anything. And there are tools to empowerment, like questioning skills, or there's things like I use the 4 stages of competency. I think we forget about that. Every time we start something new, we go instantly into conscious incompetence. And that's when we now need to, learn. And, you go through that whole cycle. And if we could just remember that would make a really big difference to how we operated in our world. So for me, clarity plus confidence over empowerment equals a life that thrives.
Wow. I absolutely love that. And I'm all for the formula as well, by the way. So I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Thank you for proofing my formula. But that is the formula for what I do. And I wanted to share that formula. I wanted to, since the 2000s, I've been looking at all the one-to-many ways of operating and building a business. And I wanted to have something. And so I did. And then I ran it for 3 years, and I built this program called the Magnificent You program, which is a 27-module self-directed program with 115 micro lessons around these subjects. And it's about you stepping into your power and your permission, because we're always waiting for somebody else to validate us. And my thing is validate your own self. So I let go of the Compass Club because I wasn't getting the amount of people that I wanted. And some of that's to do with me and me not kind of maybe marketing as much, but also being so busy to not build it in the way I wanted to. And some of it is really, and I poured a lot into that. And I think this is a really important lesson for leaders and for our listeners or watchers. And that is that sometimes when something isn't working, stop pouring more into it. Recognize that you need to cut the strings. And that can be really hard and difficult. I did so much, but actually, if it's not working for you, pouring more into it isn't going to make it work. You're just going to make your hole bigger. So I let it go, but I still had this amazing program. And I'm like, what would I like to do with it? And what I want to do is make it really accessible. And then what I want to do is slowly but surely build community around it. But also I was thinking about my own funnel from a business point of view, which is having a self-directing program that was at low entry level, being able to do maybe Q&A sessions off the back of that. So if people got questions, then they could speak to me. And then on top of that, then is a group coaching offering called the Circle of Brilliance. So I have a summit called the Brilliant Summit. And again, for women in leadership, it's a how-to summit. And I wanted to do something that was more deep dive. And so that's where the Circle of Brilliance comes in. And then obviously then there's my one-to-one coaching, which is of the higher level. And everybody's not going to be able to afford that. But what I recognize is that more people need access. And so I wanted to create an ecosystem that allows them to do it. So it sits on Mighty Network. And again, there are resources that come with that. And what they don't have access to yet, but that will come in time, is there's a whole book library, there's a music library. You know, I think it's really important that people, that for very busy leaders and conscious leaders, that you make it easy for them to access. Time is definitely a premium. And so if I've got to go here, there and everywhere to find something, then I may abandon even trying to find it because I've got so many things going on. So I wanted to create a space that really allowed people to do that really important self-development, self-leadership work, so they could leverage that personal development for professional success.
Wow.
That's why Magnificently You. So let me tell you why it's called Magnificently You.
You beat me to my next question.
Yeah, why is it called it? Why is it called it? I'm reading your brain, Desi. So the reason why it's called Magnificent You is my husband and I, we used to do a lot of work in schools, and it was called Magnificent Generation. And the reason why we use the phrase magnificent is because our core fundamental belief is that everybody is born magnificent. It is just the layers of labels, of the of the baggage that we end up carrying that stops us from seeing and embracing that magnificence. So sometimes I will say to people, look, I'm going to take a duster and some polish, and polish you off so you can truly shine. I think all of us have that shine within us. I love the Marianne Williamson, it's actually up on my wall, quote of, we all shine as children do. It's just we need to shine to allow other people to shine. And so many of us are living lives that are half lives because we won't allow ourselves to see our own brilliance, because we've put so much of our power in the hands of somebody else, of what somebody else told us about who we are and what we can do and what we achieve. Most of us can talk about maybe a relative or a teacher or a first boss who said, oh, you'll never amount to anything, or you're not good enough, or I don't think you'll make it into this industry, or your work's not good enough, or you're too fat, or you're too tall, or you're too small, or you're too something. And those stories, and they are stories and narratives, they are determining us even now as grown adults. And so changing the narrative, I think a lot of our work is mindset, changing those narratives and being able to let go of those stories and embrace who we really are. that makes a difference to how we show up as leaders. It makes a difference to how we also deal with our team members, whether we extend grace, whether we help them grow and develop, or whether or not we just on them all the time, making their lives difficult. Like, if we can see the humanity in others, then we can start to nurture them to be better. And I say it all the time, which is sometimes we're sitting in the wrong soil. And if we find the right soil, the right environment, the right kind of leaders, and if we can be that, we can really make changes, positive changes.
Yeah, we can grow. Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's why it's called Magnificently You.
Wow. Amazing. And you know what's interesting for me, or inspiring rather, is that I've been able to see you lead by example with that too. So going all the way back to 2012, I've seen how you've been able to operate and function and lead by example. So that's been basically who you are and how you've been able to emanate, radiate those qualities. But that's the past. But as we look to the future, the world is only getting even more complex, right? So and even more uncertain. So what do you believe is the single most important quality or skill leaders need to navigate what's ahead?
I think it's a really hard question. And then I was like, I'm going to really honest. What came to mind when I looked at this question, and obviously if you ask me again, it's come back again, it's resilience. You have to build your ability to bounce back. And I think when we look at a toddler, like I always say, make mistakes like a toddler, right? When you look at a toddler that's trying to learn how to walk and to gain its motor skills, it falls down, it knocks itself into things. When it's trying to walk, you've got face plant. But when you watch a toddler, they may cry initially, but then they get back up and try again. What I notice with us as adults, we've lost some of that ability to bounce back. So when we get knocked by something, we're down for months, sometimes weeks, for some people years. So resilience, what I love about it is I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a guy who did a whole kind of 10 years of research back in the 70s with children around resilience. And he talks about the boy with the bread sandwich. And this young boy used to come to school every day. He would be smiling, happy, but he only had 2 slices of bread. That was his meal. That was his sandwich, because his mother was actually a drunk. And what he noted was that the event, the circumstances didn't determine how that young boy showed up. And there's more research that says trauma isn't based on the event. And that might seem incredible to believe. Trauma is about how we respond to the event. That's what makes the difference between the person who's been through terrible circumstances and still rises, and the person who's been through some terrible circumstances and never gets back up again. It's how we view the event and the meaning we place on it, and the meaning that we place on what that event means about us. And so, as leaders in a very volatile, changing environment, our role is to build our resilience. And that means, I call it our bounce back ability. Like today, if I'm being honest, I was feeling a bit down earlier today, right? But what I knew in my soul was I could be down today and then bounce back tomorrow. I've already bounced back, right? This has been great. I mean, I had a previous conversation, it was great as well, right? So, because, we have those moments of questioning. They're not a problem. It is our ability to bounce back. that's what we've got to work on as leaders, where yes, we get, I get knocked down, but I get back up again, that song, or we fall down and we get up. Like there's a reason for this. And that is your ability to be resilient. And so in being resilient, there are things, find opportunities to laugh, people you can laugh with, lean into your network. I'm a firm believer of journaling. I've been journaling since November. I'm literally on my 26-year, I think it is, anniversary of journaling. Yeah, 26 years. I started in November 1999, which is a great place to get things out of your head, to work things out, to recover. There are lots of different ways in which you can build your resilience, even just taking a moment and going, how am I feeling about that? So resilience, I think, is going to make the big difference between the leader who makes it through and the leader who doesn't.
Wow, that is so powerful. That bounce back ability. So resilience, and that's certainly food for thought for me, for all of our listeners. Now we're on to our penultimate question. I don't want this to end, but I suppose it does have to. I'm enjoying this too much, Madeline. This is fantastic.
It's great. Great talking to you.
It is. So for that one person that's listening, and that person who probably may feel stuck right now or overwhelmed, or they're not sure what their next path is, or even just as what we described in our conversation, that person is now a leader, or in that position at least, but they're not sure what they should be doing whilst they're there. What's the one small actionable thing that they could probably start to do tomorrow to start that journey or recognizing their own strength?
It's really difficult to give you one thing, so I might be cheeky and give you more than one.
We'll take it all.
You're going to take it. You're going to take it. Okay. I'm going to say two things. I think the first thing is get it out of your head. Whatever's going on in, like, if it's a case of I feel really stuck, this is why journaling is it's like, write it down. I feel really stuck right now. And why? Like, what is it? Like, get it out of your head. Because what I find is sometimes our heads are so full, swirling thoughts, that we can't work out any answers. We can't be solution focused because there's no space for solutions. So if we can get what's going on in our head out, it gives us some space to start working out solutions. But before you can get to solutions, you've got to work out what the problem is. So spend some time writing down what's going on in your head. You may find that what is the initial thing, as you're writing, more things come out, and then you get to the real crux of the matter, which may not be what presented in the first place. It might be, actually, I'm really unhappy. I'm unhappy in this role. I don't even know if I want to be a leader. I preferred being an individual contributor. And I think that what's important in this life that we don't do is that we make everything about progression up the leadership ladder. Not everybody is a people leader. Whilst everybody can be a leader, everybody may not be a people leader. And I think we need to make it far more acceptable to be an outstanding individual contributor. And senior, like move somebody from being just a contributor to a senior contributor and recognize maybe a ladder of progression in that way. The second thing is no man is an island. I think too often we're trying to work it all out on our own. So whether that's a mentor, a sponsor, a coach, whether it's a trusted confidant, find people to talk to, because sometimes the solutions in your head or not in your head is because you may not have the breadth of experience or knowledge to find an answer. It's one of the things I find frustrating about the coaching industry, which is it's almost like everyone's got their own answers. Yes, they have, but if you've never operated in a corporate environment, if you've never worked at this level before, you don't know what you don't know. So all of this, well, if you did know, what would you know? I don't know, because I've never experienced it. I've got no idea. So stop asking me if I don't know, what would I know? I don't know. And that's why for me, I never call myself a pure coach when I sit with clients. I say I coach, I consult, I mentor, I kick up the backside, I champion, I challenge, because we are complex human beings and we don't always have all of our answers. And there's lots of people in a lot of the regulated side of coaching that will say, no, you can't do that. But actually, if you've never experienced something, you've got no idea how to navigate it.
Yeah, wow. How powerful is that? Now, this has been an incredibly grounding, inspiring, and captivating conversation. And clearly, for all of our listeners, what we can see is that Madeline clearly cares about helping others to succeed, helping others find themselves as leaders. So this question is really pertinent for each and every one of us that we're about to ask right now, because one, we want to thank you so much, Madeline, for you sharing your wisdom with us, sharing your inspiration with us as well. So where could we go? Where can our audience go to learn more about you, to reach out to you for coaching, to connect to the community and other places where they can best reach out to you?
Okay, so you can find me at madelinemcqueen.com, which is literally MadeleineMcQueen.com. And I say this because people like to add extra E's, A's, and I's into the name. So it's madelinemcqueen.com. If you do /, you can go to circle dash of dash brilliance, or you can put myplace.madeleinemcqueen.com, so that goes at the beginning. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm the Madeline McQueen. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I am Madeline McQueen. There are a few of us, but I'm the one with Madeline McQueen. Nobody else has it as just Madeline McQueen. And I am on Facebook, but I think it's about ghost town there for me. But you can find me there. I'm trying to think where else. Oh, I'm on TikTok as well as the Madeline McQueen as well. So there are a few places you can find me. And if you want to send an email, you can send it to hello@magnificentlyu.com.
That is fantastic. And so, guys, if you want to get small bite-sized moments, there's TikTok. To reach out, you've got all of these other avenues of communication that you can reach out to Madeline. And of course, all of those details will be in the description of our video as well. So be sure to check that out. Be sure to reach out to Madeline, and that will help you to start a record-breaking journey that you yourself won't be able to believe, because you don't know what you don't know until you get there. So that is wonderful. We will have all of those links, guys. So make sure you check that out. Thank you again for your time and your energy.
I really appreciate you having me.
That was a masterclass in conscious leadership. Now, there is a clear message here. Your technical skill will not get you in the door only, but it's your ability to connect, to communicate, and to lead with empathy. And all the things we talked about today, this is what will build your legacy. This is what will enable you to have the better choices that you actually desire. And as designers, we spend countless of hours designing user flows, interfaces, wireframes, experiences, and things of the like. But what today's conversation highlights is that the most important thing we can design is our communication and analyze our inner selves. Every meeting is a user experience. Every feedback session is a usability test for our ideas, how we speak, how we build alliances, how we navigate the human element of our work. Now, that is the design challenge that ultimately determines our success. Now, Madeline's career is living proof that when you master the art of connecting with people, you unlock your ability to lead in any field. Now, it's the work that turns great ideas into tangible reality. So let me ask you, how can you be more intentional in designing your next important conversation. Stay present, stay curious, and until the next time, keep minding the experience.